Coming up on KCCI 8 News Close-Up, as Iowans continue to pick up the pieces from a week's worth of storms, state leaders get a first-hand look at what they're still dealing with and talk directly with storm victims. And it's been a busy week for the United States Supreme Court, from a ruling on access to an abortion pill to a Trump-era ban on rapid-fire gun accessories. We're breaking it all down this morning.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
Good morning and welcome to KCCI 8 News Close Up. I'm Ophelia Jacobson, in for Amanda Rooker this week. This week, state leaders visited these 4 towns hit hard by severe weather, including tornadoes over the last 6 weeks. They wanted to see firsthand how much work has been done, what's left to do, and the obstacles people are facing as they try to recover. KCCI's Amanda Rooker was right there with them.
It's been more than 3 weeks since a tornado swept through the town of Greenfield, and although so much debris has been cleared away, the people here are still picking up the pieces. I spent the day with Governor Kim Reynolds, talking to her as she toured 4 towns, including Greenfield. Really, her message to people is that this is not one and done, that she is coming back, she's standing with them, that she plans to come back time after time. The state stands with storm survivors in their recovery process.
The sounds of machines carrying away scraps of metal and wood fill the near-empty landscape of Greenfield. These plots of dirt were once filled with homes until an EF4 tornado tore through town. It's a moment Kim Brewer will never forget.
And we could just hear the windows shatter and the house cracking, and then you could feel the whole house just move off the foundation.
Brewer then felt her body lift from the ground. She was sucked out of her house and into the storm.
It just felt like you were just in a wind tunnel, and like you could just feel everything hitting you. And I could just taste the dirt. You could feel like just wood hitting you and dirt hitting you. And then all of a sudden I was just on the ground.
Brewer's recovering with her daughter Ellie, battered and bruised, but grateful to be alive. Now the two are left without a home.
That was a hard adjustment at first.
Yeah.
To just
Be like, oh, let's just go home, but we can't go home.
The May 21st tornado destroyed 153 houses across the town of Greenfield. It killed 5 people and injured 35. Days after the storm, Governor Kim Reynolds surveyed the damage. She ordered state and federal disaster declarations to funnel funding and assistance to the people in town. 3 weeks later, she returned.
You don't just show up the day after and just say your hearts, our hearts and prayers are with you and your family. We have to execute. We have to clean the debris, and then we have to really get into recovery mode.
Reynolds met with local officials, learning what needs are still going unmet. Emergency management says 30 homes still need torn down and cleared, and they're working to secure short and long-term housing for people displaced. Some parts of town are still without internet. Some areas don't have lighting.
We want those that are impacted to know we're not walking away, but we're going to figure out how we can make this community even more sustainable, more vibrant, and a place where people want to stay and move and really help them recover in an even better way.
Before stopping in Greenfield, the governor started her day in the small western town of Harlan. An EF3 tornado barreled through on April 26th. Damaging 74 properties across Shelby County and causing an estimated $100 million in damage. Farmers were hit hard.
We lost 40,000 head of hogs displaced from our county. Not died, but displaced because we lost 16 confinements. Well, that's contracted income. These guys are out. How do we subsidize that? How do we fill in that gap?
County Supervisor Steve Kenkel says it will likely take farmers years to recover. He's hoping county and state government can find places to help.
The farmers out here are multi-generational. A lot of them are 30 to 50-year-olds. They had loans on buildings that have been destroyed, and now you're coming and asking them to take loans out again. That's very difficult, so how do we make that better for them?
That same April storm ravaged the small town of Minden in Pottawatomie County. It turned 48 homes to piles of rubble and damaged almost half of the houses in town.
It's been more than a month since a tornado ripped through the town of Minden, and even though they've cleared away a lot of the debris, the signs of damage are still so overwhelming. Right now I'm walking in a driveway and you can see all that's left of a garage. Behind that, all that's left of the house, that foundation just sitting there empty. Behind that, another house, the windows blown out, holes in the rooftop, trees torn apart. This is what we're seeing all over town. Pieces of people's lives laying around waiting to be rebuilt.
And it was horrid. The whole walls were just going like this.
Lavina Morgan huddled in her home with her husband and grandson as wind pounded on the walls.
Just keep saying, please God, don't let us die, and he will keep us protected. And I think that's the only thing that saved us.
Morgan's prayers for survival were answered, but now her concern has shifted to rebuilding her tattered town. And she says many who lost their homes can't get insurance to cover the cost.
Everybody that had a home, and most of them are all paid off homes, are getting nothing in return and having to start all over from scratch, renting from somebody else. That's no way to live. I'm sorry, but it's not. And I don't think the government is doing enough to help. They need to provide the money for people to rebuild their homes. They really do, because we're losing over half of our town because they can't afford to rebuild.
Minden's mayor, Kevin Zimmerman, says insurance companies have been slow to help, keeping the town from moving forward.
It's been a month and a half. I mean, if the building is on the ground, it's a total loss, I would think. But I guess they need a structure engineer to tell them that. So it makes no sense to me. But they need to just get off the fence and give them some answers so they can go the next step.
Zimmerman feels that frustration firsthand, trying to fix a home he owns.
The house got lifted and set back down on the foundation. The foundation's cracked all the way around. They're not paying me a dime for the foundation, and they're saying the house can be fixed.
He says several businesses were also hit and are struggling to rebuild. The town also now needs a new water treatment plant after the tornado destroyed theirs. They're paying $350,000 for temporary water service while they work to build a new plant. The mayor says it will likely take years to recover, concerns he brought to the governor.
We want this town to succeed. We want people to stay. We want to get them up and going, and that means businesses, that means business, that means housing, that means the water treatment plant, and just making sure that we're making all of the available resources available to them so they can make decisions based on options.
The outbreak of tornadoes in April and May left behind a path of destruction, flattening towns across the state. But communities see the leveled ground as a clean slate to rebuild a brighter future. Amanda Rooker, KCCI 8 News, Iowa's news leader.
And still to come on KCCI 8 News Close Up, Iowa's book ban battle. A federal appeals court weighs the challenges to banning books with sexual content from school libraries. But first, Iowa's new immigration law is challenged. The arguments that went before a district judge this week and when a final decision could be made. Earlier this week, a federal district judge heard arguments over a lawsuit seeking to block Iowa's new immigration law. KCCI's Amanda Rooker was inside the federal courthouse as those arguments were being made. This stems from a law passed last legislative session. It says anyone found in Iowa that has previously been deported can be arrested by state law enforcement, and Iowa judges can then deport them to a foreign country.
We asked the federal court to temporarily and permanently block this unconstitutional and unjust and deeply harmful law from ever taking effect.
Arguing before a federal judge Monday, the U.S. Department of Justice and the ACLU said states do not have the power to set or enforce immigration rules, something they argue the Supreme Court has upheld for more than 100 years. Deputy Director of the American Immigration Council, Emma Winger, told the court that makes Iowa's immigration law unconstitutional.
Only the federal government gets to decide which non-citizens may enter the United States and which non-citizens should be removed.
Winger also says the law does not include exceptions for anyone who's previously been deported but is back in the U.S. seeking asylum or has some form of lawful status.
Should this law go into effect, even if you are currently in the United States lawfully, if you were previously deported, you could be arrested, imprisoned, and forced to leave the country.
Deputy Solicitor General Patrick Valencia from the Iowa Attorney General's office defended the law, telling the judge that, quote, the federal government sets standards on immigration policy, but that, quote, Congress has not said that states lose their right to enforce those standards. Valencia argued the U.S. is facing an immigration crisis that has brought mass human trafficking to Iowa. He said the legislation empowers state law enforcement to enforce immigration policy, which he argues is constitutional and necessary to keep Iowans safe. But outside the courthouse, people lined the streets, protesting the law with songs and speeches.
Because we believe we have the right to have a better future. We are here because nobody can stop us to keep dreaming.
Hoping the judge will rule their way.
Iowa's Attorney General Brenna Bird released a statement after the hearing, writing in part, quote, since Biden refuses to enforce our immigration laws, Iowa is doing the job for him. Today we made the case in court defending Iowa's law that prohibits illegal reentry and keeps our community safe. A decision is expected to be made before the law is set to go into effect on July 1st. The state of Iowa is asking a federal court to lift an injunction on Iowa's law banning certain books from schools. The law bans books depicting sex acts. Schools were supposed to remove those books by January 1st. A lower court blocked parts of the law, calling it, quote, incredibly broad. Iowa's largest teachers union agrees.
What the education community needs, what our members need, is some guidance in how to implement this law so that they can comply. They don't have that now.
Attorneys for the state of Iowa argue the law is constitutional and the state has a right to enforce it. It's unclear when a decision will be made in this case. THC distributors across Iowa are scrambling to change their products before a new law goes into effect. It bans products that have more than 4 milligrams of THC per serving or 10 milligrams per container. The changes need to be made by July 1st, giving businesses little time to rework their products.
So everything is going to have to be taken outside the state and reworked. We're really trying to work with HHS to try to bring products that are compliant into the state. We believe in hemp products and we believe there's a place for them.
Several hemp product companies have a hearing with the Department of Health and Human Services next week. They hope the department can give clear guidelines on how to move forward. When we come back, the community activist looking to fill the shoes of another in the Iowa State House as both parties weigh in on how they think Iowa voters will respond at the polls in November. Welcome back to Close Up. Now that the primary election is over, voters and candidates are setting their sights on November. KCCI spoke with both chairs of the Iowa Republican and Democratic Party on their outlook regarding state races heading into the general election.
Here's what's interesting for me as a chair. We are now, the rural areas, we're saturated. I don't know that there's any other place where there's a cornfield where Republicans can grow. If there is, I'll be there. But now we're looking at suburban Iowa. Now we're even looking in some areas, in some cities, I think are a little bit more receptive to the Republican message, and even some of those urban areas. We get to try there as well. When you have majorities like we do, this is also going to allow the GOP to make outreach and to actually try to move even suburban Iowa and even some areas of urban Iowa more red. And so I'm excited about that. And so there's still going to be some room for innovation here. And we're going to have to be creative.
After the last legislative session, we have a lot of Iowans who are really fed up and feeling unheard. The area education agencies, for example, were a piece of legislation that really frustrated Iowans because 9,000 of them reached out to their legislators, just to me alone, and didn't hear from so many or didn't get the votes they wanted. So they're pretty fed up. We had 5 candidates who decided to run for the Iowa House specifically because of area education agencies. So I think that we're going to see some more balance come back. Again, those races are close, and I think that we're going to see a lot of flips this cycle. I think we're going to see more balance come back to the legislature. Do I think that the House is going to flip to Democratic control? I don't, but I do think that we can narrow that gap and show that Iowa is not as red as it looks. I go around the state and I talk to people who say, this is not the state I grew up in, and they're not happy about that. They want to see some balance back. And I think that's what we can provide when we talk about an alternative. And in the suburbs, there are representatives here who have voted against what Iowans want on reproductive freedom, on area education agencies, on school vouchers, and they need to be held accountable for that. And so that's what we're going to be doing with these amazing candidates who are ready to say to these suburban districts, you know what, you're not being represented the way you want. Let's make a change.
And this week, KCCI spoke with the winner of a highly competitive primary state house race for the first time since the primary election. Iowa House District 34 covers the area just north of downtown Des Moines. Longtime Representative Akayo Abdul-Samad is retiring after holding the seat for 18 years. Democrat Reverend Rob Johnson got the endorsement from his predecessor, Akayo Abdul-Samad, the state rep who has been in office since 2006. KCCI's Bo Bowman introduces us to Johnson, who will be competing for a spot at the State House this November. And while Johnson says he'll never fill his shoes, he's looking forward to creating his own legacy.
We have the opportunity to really show that hard work pays off.
Reverend Rob Johnson received 43% of the vote in the Democratic primary election last week, enough to move on to the general election in District 34. If elected, Johnson said he wants to work with colleagues across the aisle specifically on creating more access to mental health resources.
People are yearning for help and for resources. I know because I'm doing a lot of those funerals for people who we're losing because we're not getting the resources that we need.
The spot in District 34 opened up after Representative Akayo Abdul-Samad announced his retirement from the legislature this spring. Abdul-Samad used the position to be a voice for people of color in Des Moines, a role Johnson hopes to continue in the State House.
Because of the work that he's done, we're able to walk on this pathway. We're able to make a pathway even for those to come behind us.
Abdul-Samad held the office for 18 years, but only faced a Republican challenger twice during his 9 campaigns. Johnson will face off against Republican Danielle Duggan, who lives in Ankeny but says she plans to move to District 34 before the deadline. She told KCCI on Close Up that it's important for Republicans to run in areas dominated by Democrats.
It's easy to be negative and complain about the process or how the system is set up, but it's a lot harder to step up and get involved. And I think that this is an opportunity not only for me to educate, empower, and encourage other like-minded individuals with the same morals and values to step up and do the same thing.
Johnson and Duggan will face off Election Day on November 5th. Next on Close Up, the Supreme Court preserves access to an abortion drug. We'll have more on the High Court's decision and what some Republican lawmakers in Iowa are saying about it. Welcome back. This week, the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously decided to preserve access to a pill widely used in medical abortions. It's the first abortion case the court decided since it overturned Roe v. Wade 2 years ago. The Supreme Court rejected a lawsuit challenging the Food and Drug Administration's approach to regulating mifepristone. The ruling allows the pill to continue to be mailed to patients without an in-person doctor's visit. Justice Brett Kavanaugh wrote the unanimous opinion. He said doctors and anti-abortion groups didn't have standing to sue. The reasoning in this case was technical and could encourage other challenges in the future.
The data are very, very clear that mifepristone is extremely safe, extremely effective.
They're not saying that abortion pills are safe, they just said the case didn't have standing. So we'll be back with another case with better standing next time.
Mifepristone was used in nearly 2/3 of abortions in the country last year. Democrats are praising the Supreme Court's decision, including President Joe Biden. He says the decision, quote, does not change the fact that the fight for reproductive freedom continues. It does mean that mifepristone, or medication abortion, remains available and approved. Here in Iowa, Republicans are voicing their concerns. First District Representative Marionette Miller Meeks says the ruling, quote, does not delve into the issues of safety or protection of women who are sent abortion pills in the mail with no medical oversight. Second District Congresswoman Ashley Hinson says mailing abortion pills without a doctor's supervision is, quote, detrimental to women's health and safety. Fourth District Congressman Randy Feenstra is calling it an unfortunate outcome. Senator Joni Ernst says, quote, women's safety is still in danger. Promoting access to mail-order drugs with a known history of adverse reactions is not protecting women. The fight to stop dangerous mail-order abortion drugs is not over. The Supreme Court still has another abortion-related case to weigh in on before the term is over. The U.S. Supreme Court has struck down a Trump-era ban on gun accessories known as bump stocks, enacted in the wake of the 2017 Las Vegas mass shooting. The court's conservative majority found that a bump stock, which allows a shooter to quickly fire a semi-automatic rifle, does not convert the firearm into a machine gun. Natalie Brand has details.
The U.S. Supreme Court put guns back in the political spotlight Friday, striking down a ban on bump stocks. The Trump administration put the rule in place after America's deadliest modern mass shooting. In 2017, a gunman fired more than 1,000 rounds into the crowd at a Las Vegas concert in 11 minutes. The High Court's 6-3 opinion focused on the mechanics of the gun accessory.
This is whether or not the ATF, an executive agency, could say semi-automatic weapons plus bump stock equals machine gun, and machine guns are banned under federal law.
Justice Thomas, writing for the majority, said a bump stock does not convert a semi-automatic rifle into a machine gun any more than a shooter with a lightning-fast trigger finger does. Justice Sotomayor, in the dissent, sharply disagreed, stressing a rifle equipped with a bump stock can fire at a rate of 400 to 800 rounds per minute. Writing, when I see a bird that walks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, I call that bird a duck.
Conservative justices also took issue with the ATF writing the rule instead of lawmakers, saying it's up to Congress to amend the law regarding bump stocks.
But lawmakers we spoke to on both sides of the aisle don't expect any movement on the issue.
Not particularly optimistic. I think it's probably going to be left where it is.
The Supreme Court must still rule on another big gun case, deciding whether or not to uphold federal law that prohibits people under domestic violence restraining orders from owning firearms.
Thank you for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Have a great day.